Welcome to Season 2 with the Market Mystics, where we discuss and redefine markets, wealth, and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Join us on the journey while we consider new possibilities with special guests who might just challenge a few perspectives. Get ready to dive in deep with your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to Thursday.
Welcome to Thursday. We're actually recording a little early, but I'm okay with that. We really like to record around the things that we do in our life.
Yeah, well, we like to post consistently.
That's true. That's true. So we just wrapped up the Action July. And if you listened to our last episode, we kind of came out of it with some unexpected things and also some real drive to kind of keep it going.
Yeah.
I was inspired by how things from previous weeks would come up again. Like we didn't just like do one thing and move on. It just like kind of continued and built upon each other. Well, anyway, so we did that. But today we want to get back to talking about finances. It's been a while.
Has been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how long we'll stay on this topic, but at least for the moment, like, I think this will be a fun conversation.
For sure.
And I honestly think it plays into the end of Action July to a bit more than it looks on the surface.
I think you are right. I don't know. Maybe I can give a top secret little tidbit about something. Like, are you okay with this?
Sure.
So all along through Action July, we were in the background also really focusing on finances.
True.
And taking action on kind of, I'd say, breaking down walls or barriers or whatever you would want to call it, the things that we've put up to block finances from flowing to us or from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was always kind of working behind the scenes as well, something we were keeping in the forefront of our minds as we were doing the rest of the stuff with Action July as well. So this is actually really a fresh subject as well. And if you listen to us at all in the early days, you know that a lot of our content had to do with finances. So how do we want to start this out, Josh?
Well, okay. I think simply this broad topic got started by a question that was proposed to me of why do most lottery winners eventually return back to the level of finances they were at before they won the lottery? Not 100%, but the majority,
right?
A large percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were, as Kim and I have been, where I think this connects is as Kim and I have been working on our mindsets with money and setting those things up. One thing we found was at the end of last week, both of us felt a drive to write down a vision, some plans, some goals, to start really focusing on purpose and goals, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important because as a good steward of a business or a good steward of money, it's important to have a plan of what to do with it. And I've had several mentors say, God won't give you $1 million if you are just going to put it in your bank. And sometimes he won't give it to you if you're just going to give it away. There are times where maybe that's what he wants you to do with it. But if he's going to do it, give that to you, he wants you to be a good steward of it. And so setting up a plan of this is what I would do with it. This is how I would handle it. And I know Kim and I, we did an episode a while back where we talked about this a little bit, and how, what would you do if I gave you $100, $1,000, $10,000, $1 million? We sort of had this conversation loosely about like what the plan would be. But I think where we're stepping into now, keeping the momentum of Action July, is more detailing some of those plans so that as resources start to flow, there is a path, there is a channel already set up for them to flow. And so I think that's where this conversation connects with Action July. And I think my answer simply to why do lottery winners return to their previous level of wealth is because, one, they don't have a plan. And two, they don't have a mindset established where they feel valuable enough to have, $500 million. And so it's what I have witnessed, not even firsthand, but through media of lottery winners, is there's expensive houses and cars and trips and buying your friends this and buying your friends that. And um, I would venture to say that's a little bit rooted in a lack mindset, because
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, oh, all those things I couldn't have before, I'm going to have now. And that's not rooted in the healthiest mindset about money. And so that doesn't lead to good stewardship. I also think of like sometimes celebrities who get, huge signing bonuses, or um, like I think a really great example of this is Nicolas Cage,
I was going to say the
who,
same thing.
yeah, who went through bankruptcy a few years ago, um, after being a hugely successful movie star. And in an interview, they were showing like, his houses and his cars, but his art, and just like, oh, you have just the randomest things, and it's simply because he could.
Right.
And that to me is like, that's a little bit of a kid in a candy store, where it's like, I don't actually need this. It's not beneficial for me, but I've got the money and this looks fun.
Mhm. It's
And I,
almost whimsical. Like it is,
yeah,
here's this wild hair, I'll act on it.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes that can be a lot of fun, but long term, that truly isn't good stewardship of wealth. And
Mhm.
so I think that's my mindset with lottery winners, with some of them, some celebrities that have lost their money, or athletes. And then you look at the other extreme of it, and you look at athletes like Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal, who turned their wealth through playing sports into other businesses, and created a plan and understood what was going on, and built things to sustain them long term. And I think that's the difference between having a plan of what to do with it and not having a plan. And I actually think Shaquille is a really good example, because if you listen to any interviews with him, when he first got money, he went crazy. And then he had like some people come and talk to him and be like, "Hey, you gotta you can't do this. You need to be smart with what you've been given." And it changed the way they helped mentor him into a place where it changed the way he handled his wealth. And I think that's what we're doing. Not that we're saying, hey, we're going to go start playing the lottery and we're going to win it because we have a plan. That's not what I'm saying. But having the plan in place, creating the mindset that can hold that. I mean, money is a tool,
Mhm.
but it also carries a weight and an energy. And so holding $10,000 versus holding $1 million holds a different weight. Can your consciousness, can your nervous system hold that? Like, are you in a place of maturity where you can do that? Maybe. I think that that's sometimes why money destroys, is because there isn't the structure to support it.
I think you're so right. And I keep getting these words and visuals coming into my head. And I think the biggest word that's sticking out to me is capacity.
Mm.
Like, what is your capacity to handle or hold any certain level of wealth, whether it is your current level of wealth? And yes, having a flow in and out of money is an action of wealth. But also, do you have a capacity for something that is higher, something that at this point you only dream of, or you could only think, oh my gosh, if I had this much, this is what I would do? Do you actually have the capacity to hold that, or do you only have the dreamlike state of it? So,
Mm.
like you were saying, having these, I don't remember the word you called it. I would call it funnels, like having these funnels, these channels, you said channels, set up on how any kind of influx of wealth that came your way, how it would be able to flow. And even if we're going back to this last month, we talked a lot about stepping into the flow of things, right? So finding how things are flowing, stepping into it, not trying to swim upstream and fight against it because you use so much more energy to do that, but allowing things to flow naturally and how they're supposed to go.
Mm.
But I think with finances, this is so very similar. If we think about that capacity to hold this, I also think about like a plumbing system. And if you turn on water from a source where it will continually flow without any way of directing it anywhere, it will flood and destroy, right? And once
Mm.
it's gone, it will leave like wreckage in its midst. Like if you look at the Grand Canyon, that was forged by a huge flow of water that was fairly uncontrolled, and it damaged the landscape of that land essentially, and forged it into something else, and it was fairly uncontrolled. But if we look at this in the terms of plumbing, you can set up those pipes and those channels, those funnels in which finances are able to flow when they come, so that they're well managed and don't destroy or wreak havoc or just flow uncontrollably. And then you wind up with devastation. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if that visual makes any sense to you, but to me, it sure does. And I think this is why some of the goal setting and some of the purpose and some of just like sitting down and actually taking dreams and putting them down on paper, putting like writing out, yeah, if I had $100 extra, this is what I would do. If I had $1,000 extra, this is where it would go. If I had 10,000, if I had 100,000, if I had $100 billion, how would this money flow? So
Mm-hmm.
set out the schematics for this plumbing system. And then when it starts flowing to you, then you are not sitting in that poverty mindset because you have a place for it to flow. Sometimes I think this is the difference between poverty mindset and abundance mindset, is just the ability to see how it can flow as opposed to just
Yeah.
letting it pool around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked about this a lot, but like for a long time, I viewed money as water, and like water that's stagnant grows and is not sanitary, and or and but water that flows, it doesn't mean that your river can't be deep and wide, but water that's moving is fresh water, and it needs those channels to know where to go. And so I think, one of the things that my wife and I did in our goal setting was say, this is where we want our budget to be, whether we have $1 million, $1 billion, or $20,000. Like, this is how we want to spend our money. And that to me is important because we're creating those channels of saying, this is how we allocate money. This goes to here, this goes to here, this goes to investments, this goes to charity. Like, Maybe this goes to fund money. Like there's nothing wrong with having some
Enjoyment.
of like the enjoyment of it as well. But that needs to be a channel that you allocate the flow to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you're right, because when we look back at those examples you gave, so like Nicolas Cage, and I'm not trying to talk down on him.
Sure.
It's just a very public example.
Yeah.
Um, he kind of sat in that pool, right? And he used from it and he pulled from it and things went into it, but it didn't have anywhere else to go but that one pool. And so when the pool was drained, he had nothing left. But you look at Shaquille O'Neal, so he had this pool that was developed, but he found ways to flow from that. So
Mm-hmm.
having other business ventures, having other ways of having it come in and go out,
Yeah.
like that's where it is, right? So it is creating those extra channels, because then your capacity increases. When you have pipes flowing everywhere else, you can run a whole lot more water through there than you can in just a bathtub.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. And I really think this topic is important. And I think it's important for this season. Um, there's lots of Christians that you listen to who talk about prophecies of the greatest wealth transfer and the wealth of the wicked coming into the righteous. That's amazing. Those things are beautiful. But what are you going to do with it? And most of them will say, well, I'm going to use it to grow God's kingdom. Great. How? Like, what does that mean? Does that just mean giving the money to your local church? Does that mean giving it to your favorite nonprofit or your favorite teacher? Like, what does it actually mean for you to use your money for the wealth of the kingdom to build God's kingdom? What does that look like? Does that look like you using that money to start your own like company or whatever, and you become the next Amazon or Microsoft or whatever company you like feel led to do? Like what does that look like?
Right.
And so I think that that's such an important thing for people to just sit down and ponder and to work out with the Holy Spirit of, this is what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's make it happen.
Right. Right. And I can imagine that even as people might be listening to this, they might think, well, that's all fine and good, but I don't have an extra flow of money. I don't have that abundance yet. And all I have to work with is this. Well, take a step back and look beyond that. This
Mm.
is this is just my one recommendation. Like, look beyond that. Allow yourself to dream in that. But while you're dreaming, build those other channels,
Mm-hmm.
right? Already have a plan for what will happen when it does start flowing. Then you are setting yourself up to be a good steward, and you're already increasing your capacity on what you can hold.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, because you're not going to, well, maybe not no one would do this. Most systems and most people would not fill something to overflowing if there's not some way to be able to save what's pouring out. You know what I mean? And so if you know how to increase the capacity, then you're setting yourself up to be able to hold what comes to you. And I have to say this about, you were talking about the greatest wealth transfer in the history, right? Coming to the
Mm-hmm.
church. I think as the church, we have to get over this thing that we've been taught about poverty is piety. Like it
Mm-hmm.
is honorable. It is the best to be poor, when that is not actually true. I don't know if you know this, but Yeshua said he came to bring life and life abundantly. And
Yeah,
abundant life is not poverty.
sure.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong if you're in poverty, but I think you increase your capacity. You start looking for abundance. You find a penny on the street, you pick it up, and you thank the Lord that you just found increase. So you are
Yeah.
now richer right this minute than you were 2 seconds ago before you found that penny. Yes, it's one penny, but it's abundance, right?
Yeah.
This is
Gratitude
increase
unlocks doors.
for sure. So it is about like Are you open to even receiving?
Mm.
Is there something in you that blocks that? Because for some reason you don't feel like you're worthy. You don't have the capacity. How could you ever go beyond what your mother and grandparents and their parents did? Like, how do you bust out of that pattern? How do you bust out of it? You increase your capacity. You decide that you are made for abundance. Have a conversation with the Lord about it. See what he says about abundance for you. And then you start stepping into that. You believe it. You receive it. I'm not saying name it and claim it. This isn't that kind of thing. This is here's what he promised from the beginning. So why aren't you open to it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, I think about like people who run races or drive race cars, like Formula One's really popular right now. And I saw a video the other day of they had 3 drivers sit in a room and listen to the sound of their car going around a track. And they were able to tell you which track it was going around based only on the sound of the engine.
Wow.
No visuals. And what that tells me is they've studied and they know every turn and they know every bend and they know when they're accelerating and when they're decelerating. And that's sort of how I feel with what we're talking about here is like, get to know your plan, because if you go to a race and you don't know the track, you're probably going to crash or you're going to have to go really slowly. But if you believe you were created for abundance and that God is going to pour abundance into your life, then start learning the track, start learning the things. So when the abundance comes, God doesn't have to go as slow with you and it won't crash and destroy you.
That's good. That's really good. I really enjoyed this conversation, Josh.
It was good.
I don't know if you know this about us, but we're fairly passionate about finances.
That's true.
Kind of all things finances. And I hope that came out in today. And I hope it spurs somebody on to maybe even just change a mindset or like take another look. Seek the Lord on something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining. We'll see you guys back on Monday.
Thank you for sticking around. Listen for new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Find us on all social media platforms by searching for Market Mystics. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Visit upperroomcd.com where you can find more information about the hosts, projects, and guests. Go deeper by booking a coaching appointment focused on redefining identity and wealth in your life. See you next time.